I see myself primarily as an activist, and I write and make films as part of my activism. That's my way of being an activist.
Naomi, I know that you say that you are more than a journalist, that you are a journalist activist. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think I see myself primarily as an activist, and I write and make films as part of my activism. That's my way of being an activist.
Your activism has is different to what usually has been known as the left activism. No? Even you are critic, no, to the old theories, old revolutionary theories. No?
Sometimes. I mean, I certainly see myself as part of a tradition, a left tradition. We're not inventing anything from scratch, from the beginning. But I think that there has been a process of self-criticism, of renewal, of creating new forms of activism based on old forms of activism, but that fit the times we're living in. And I think, I think in general I'm a critic of fundamentalism of any kind. So I guess maybe what you're referring to is, yeah, I'm sometimes as strong a critic of left-wing fundamentalism as I am of right-wing fundamentalism. Yeah.
I saw your film, no? Bueno, Avi, your husband, and your film La Toma in Spanish, The Take, no? in English. I found it really very interesting.
Thank you.
What is The Take?
It's, well, I guess it's a lot of things, but in its basic form, it's the story of a group of workers who decided to reopen their closed factory. And it follows that process. It's an auto parts factory called Forja San Martin. It follows them from the first day that they go back into their factory that has been closed for 2 years and occupy the plant, and then begin a long process to get the machines running again. And we live with them and follow that process for a period of close to a year. And so that's the small story, but I think that we also see it as a global story because it's a response in many ways to a challenge that was posed to me and to the movements that I'm a part of, which is, we know what you're against: neoliberalism, savage capitalism. What are you for? What's your alternative? And because I don't like fundamentalism, I never felt comfortable, me personally, certainly, but maybe I'm not comfortable with anyone doing this. I never felt comfortable saying, okay, here's the alternative to neoliberalism. Here's our one-size-fits-all 10-point plan. Have the manifesto, take it home. That's not the kind of politics that interests me. I'm interested in diversity, and I'm interested in showing that there are actually many alternatives. So this was our way of answering that question in a way that's in keeping with the theory that there isn't one answer. So it's just one story. But it's a story, I think, that changes the way, hopefully, can change the way we think about the possibility to react to these huge global forces. It's a very simple idea. It's not a new idea, but I think it's being implemented in new ways here in Argentina.
If it works, do it. No?
If it works, do it.
Do it.
But just
it doesn't matter. It is in theory or not in theory. If it works, do it.
Well, I think that
find practical solutions for problems.
Find solutions, and the theory and the ideology. If it works, it will survive. If asambleas work as a practical way to make decisions, then that will be the way that will work.
That's an important word, no? Survival. I think that is a clue of your film, no?
Well, I think it is. When we were making the film, we looked at dozens of occupied workplaces, and I met someone who was working in an occupied health clinic who had been in Montenegro, and she was telling me what was different about the way they were doing politics now as opposed to in the 70s. And she said, in the 70s we thought we could do politics from the head to the feet. And now we're starting with the feet and it's moving to the head. And that really stayed with me. Yeah.
This situation of the occupied or recovered factories happens in Argentina, but in the film you say that this could happen everywhere.
Well, because it is a response to a global phenomenon. I mean, the research...
global phenomenon. This has to do with the globalization.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was researching No Logo, and I was visiting factories, particularly clothing factories, electronic factories in Indonesia and the Philippines, in Canada. And I say this in the film, what I always heard from workers was not that they couldn't form a union, not that they couldn't try to get a raise or make their conditions better, but that as soon as they did, they were punished by the market because it was so easy to close a factory and or just move a contract. You don't even have to close a factory anymore. You just, the office in New York just says, the workers are getting a little bit too ambitious in South Korea, let's move to China, and it's just a sleight of the pen. Increase the order in China, decrease the order in South Korea or Mexico, where the unions are getting stronger. So what the workers here were experiencing, where suddenly, the boss was saying maybe we'll move to Chile or maybe we'll move to China. This is not unique to Argentina. What was unique was the response, which was to say, fine, go, but we're keeping the machines, we're staying inside. And I think that had to do with the depths of the crisis here, where people were looking outside their factory and seeing that unemployment meant becoming a cartonero, there was nothing to do but try to get a plan from the government. And that unemployment was really a death sentence, close to a death sentence, and there was very little hope, in that moment that you'd get another job. Nobody believed that.
You think that this phenomenon could happen in a developed country like yours, like Canada, or like England?
Yes.
Or is it an exclusive phenomenon of peripheral countries?
No, I don't think it is. We know it's happened in Italy. We know it's happened in France. And in Canada, we just had an experience with an aluminum factory that was being shut down, and the workers occupied the plant, kept it running. No, I mean, I think that maybe the industries will be a little different, but Argentina's industrial economy was comparable. Not exactly, but as you know, Argentina's industrial economy was comparable to many developed countries, and I think that it's precisely for that reason that we focused here, because Argentina straddles both worlds of first and third world developed, developing. Like, I mean, we could have made a film about the MST, for instance, in Brazil.
Do you have some idea of why Argentina has been so sensitive to the drama of globalization? Why more than other countries? Why has Argentina has so low defenses, so weak defenses against globalization?
Well, maybe it has something to do with what we were just talking about in terms of this idea that it could leap into the first world so quickly. And the economic model, as you know, I think it was imposed particularly strictly here, with a great deal of violence, first of all, and then with a great deal of enthusiasm under Menem, and another kind of violence. And I don't think that that is exactly unique, but I do think it has to do perhaps with this strange role that Argentina plays straddling different worlds, and the promise that neoliberalism was the ticket out of the third world into
perhaps a weak identity. Argentina,
I'm Canadian. If you want to talk about weak identities, I don't think Argentina has that weak an identity.
If it is a European country or Latin American country.
Yeah, maybe an identity crisis more than a weak identity. I never see Argentines as weak.
These governors that are so functional to the globalization desires, the desires of the FMEI, as we say, IMF in English, or the Organización Mundial de Comercio, World Commerce Organization. Are the governors, they need to impose their system. They are not casual.
No, they're desperate. They're desperate. And they're desperate, and I just, that said, the imposition of this model is in crisis. We saw that it was happening since Seattle, really, since the World Trade Organization talks collapsed in Seattle. Then after September 11th, the US was able to use its power to bully countries into accepting a trade round that no one wanted in Doha. So they were able to get a brief reprieve using the leverage of September 11th. But that has been lost. We saw the talks collapse in Cancun, and then in Miami, the last talks for the free trade area of the America, for ALCA, also collapsed, or they certainly didn't get what they wanted.
I heard you when you say that during the Bruckmann occupation, all the politics came and hung their logos. But you say that you would like to see the Bruckmann's logo, that nobody was able to draw the Bruckmann's logo. And that has to do with your very well-known book, the No Logo. What is the relation with your book and all this we are talking about?
Well, I think that there is a connection much of the book was focused on that helplessness that I was describing earlier in the factories, in the workplaces. And certainly the first time I was in Bruckmann, I felt, yes, this is a response to what I saw in sweatshop factories around the world, with this simple idea of saying, okay, if capitalism is going to be so mobile, there are responses that are possible, and this response of, okay, we're keeping the machines, you can leave, but we're going to keep our productive capacity. That to me was a very natural evolution. In terms of branding, for me, even though the book is called No Logo, the book does say that it really is not about, it's not about logos, it's not about trying to have a world without any signs.
Yes.
You know, this was just a kind of a slogan to respond to the privatization of life. You know, the idea that even our bodies are branded. That's all that was, and I think it is actually important for social movements to have their own kind of marketing. And one of the, you know, I did make that criticism about Brookman, and I got attacked by every Trotskyist in Argentina. But you know, another example, a positive example, is Zanon, where you have a great dialectic between the factory and the university, the activists, but also you have people who are studying marketing, professors of marketing, of sales, helping the workers at Zanon in very practical ways, you know, not coming to preach to them about ideology, but to say, okay, you're doing something incredible here in practice, and I have skills as an academic, as a student. I can help design a logo, I can help you come up with a business plan. So that sort of marriage, you know, also exists here.
How was that of working with Avi, your husband?
Well, this
In the take, no? In the
yeah, I mean, this project brought together every part of our lives, and it broke down all the barriers. You know, I was working with my husband, we were working with friends, it was activists and journalists all working together and living together, and, you know, it was a very communal project. And so, you know, it's always hard whenever you don't have any barriers in your life. You know, you're working all the time, but you're also having fun while you're working. So it was great. I mean, for me, I couldn't have done the film without Avi because I didn't know how to make a film. I'm a writer, and I came to Buenos Aires in February.
Are you going to change books for films?
You know, I feel like
It's a temptation.
no, not for
No?
me. I really want to go back to
Yes.
writing, and but I think that there are certain, I could never, maybe I'm not a good enough writer, but I could never have done justice to the movements here. Also, I didn't want it to go through me. I mean, what's wonderful about film is that you can have many voices. And yes, you know, as an author, you're shaping it. You know, you have too much power, but at the same time, you know, you can see it. You can see it for yourself, and you can meet people, and they can speak in their own voices. And when I first arrived in Buenos Aires in February 2002, and the whole city was turned inside out, and there were people on every street corner having asambleas and voting, and I just thought, oh my God, people have to see this to believe it, you know? And that's when we said we have to make a film, and I couldn't have made a film without Avi, because he knows how to do it, and I don't.
What is your expectation of the film? You think that it will be useful, sort of machine for people that will learn of this dramatic Argentine experience?
I think it's
And
going
it
to
could be possible to avoid the reproduction of this globalization illness.
I think it's going to inspire people in ways that, well, I think that Argentina is already inspiring people in ways that are not fully understood here. I've seen, you know, the incredible interest around the world in the neighborhood assemblies, in the piqueteros, and just different new organizing models, and the occupied factories. And this film will just be part of that dissemination process, you know, just getting those examples out there. And I do believe that we're going to see these ideas reproduced, not exactly in the same way, but in ways that make sense in other places. But the principles that there's a moral ownership, a right to assert a moral ownership in the shared resources of our communities, whether it's land, whether it's machines, whether it's housing, whether it's food. You know, I think it doesn't take much to inspire people. That's my experience, is that our inspiration is constantly beaten down by a media machine that tells us that nothing is possible, that activism is vaguely absurd and embarrassing.
Yes.
And it actually doesn't take all that much. That's what I saw with No Logo. The response to No Logo is that it actually doesn't take very much at all to break people's cynicism and get them inspired to start becoming more active.
One of the things that moved me more of the film is how important work is for people.
Yeah, yeah.
That goes much farther than the fact of the economy, of the, the salary. It's has to do with the identity.
Yeah.
These people struggle for their identity.
Yeah. And I think that is something that this country has come to respect, and I think that it's something that's very important for the unions in the developing, well, around the world, but in my country, the unions have a very bad image problem because they're seen as the people who don't work because they're always going on strike. So you only ever hear about a union when people refuse to work, right? So what's amazing about these stories is that it's people refusing not to work, demanding to work. And I think, that's when you see the dignity. And at its core, that's what labor organizing is about, but we need to rediscover that.
God should modify that commandment of do not work on the seventh day.
Thou shalt work. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.